Welcome to episode 205 of Empty the Bench on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. That's Johnny Montalbano. I'm Nick Morgasen. Follow us on social media at ETB Sports, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at ETB Sports. Follow us on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network at ETB Network, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you follow us on YouTube, youtube.com/ETB Network. For all our shows, ETB Sports, The Monty Moment from Game On, a bunch of other shows we have as well, our Football Friday, which Johnny gets to do a Thursday pick before, which he's not used to doing. We'll get into all that as well. And also, if you want to find us on audio platforms, you can do that as well. Spotify, Acast, iHeart, Apple, we're everywhere. All right, so we got a lot to get into. Tom couldn't be here tonight, so Johnny's filling in. A lot to get into for this episode. We'll get down into the MLB postseason update, ALCS, NLCS, not competitive so far. Some people might debate me on that, but yes, they're not very competitive. The Giants interview let me say that again. San Francisco Giants have interviewed a very interesting candidate for their managerial position. We will get into that. Also, a certain GM is out due to the front office's negligence. We'll get into that one as well. Also, NFL, a lot of major quarterback injuries, a lot. The injury list is full. We will break all that down as well. Also, our Thursday night football picks. Jaguars at the Saints for week 7. I can't believe it's week 7, and we're almost at the halfway point of the season.
Crazy, yeah.
So that's flying by fast. Also, does Aaron Rodgers think he's ahead of schedule? Yes, that's been a sticky point for me as a Jet fan so far. We'll get into all that. Also, Rockets guard Kevin Porter and his ex-girlfriend now saying that he didn't hit her. I don't know which I believe. That's kind of the quite literally he said, she said debate. And we'll get into James Harden no showing. Gee, shocker. So a lot to get into. Let's start with the MLB postseason update. So ALCS, NLCS, as we speak, 2-0 before, obviously, because we're recording before the games. Which series do you want to start with? Because there's some unique points in both.
Well, I think I like to start with the NLCS, Nick, if that's all right, because I think what the Philadelphia Phillies are doing right now is it's historic, it's incredible. It's kind of surprising, and it's also not. I mean, it's surprising in terms of how easily they disposed of the Braves, but if you actually really look at their roster, it's really not, because, I mean, you've got power up and down this lineup with Kyle Schwarber from the leadoff spot, Trey Turner, who's had maybe one of the greatest turnarounds in a season that we've seen in baseball in recent years, Nick Castellanos, who's putting up an unbelievable few games. You know, what did he have? Like 5 homers in a 3-game span, including the first player in baseball postseason history to hit 2 home runs in a game in consecutive games. But there's also their pitching staff too, Nick. And, you know, it's Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, who have a very formidable 1-2. And the back end of that bullpen with Craig Kimbrell as well. Very, 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 very dangerous. I thought that was the one thing that when the Braves were playing the Phillies, I thought that was the worst team that the Braves could face, because, you know, the Phillies have a very good offense. We know that, but they have a very underrated rotation, especially at the top, like I just said, with Wheeler and Nola. And that 1-2, I think, is, you can almost put that up against any of the other 3 teams that are still left. Obviously, them facing Arizona, and even if you want to say the Astros and the Rangers, it's that good and puts a lot of pressure on the other teams. So that's where I'm thinking at right there with Phillies.
Yeah, this is an interesting series. So I looked up the Castellanos stats. So he's got a 345 batting average with 10 hits, 5 homers, 7 RBIs, 7 runs scored in 8 games in the 2023 postseason. Incredible stats. He's looked good so far. Maybe we can stop with the drive to deep left and stop with those dumb jokes. But other guys I'd look at also, Kyle Schwarber, again, 2 homers in game 2. This guy is, and I said it on Hitting for the Cycle, which is coming out on Friday, that I think he's got to be considered for MVP in the playoffs for the team. I know like people give him shit because like he's either going to hit a single or he's going to homer or he's going to strike out. It's multiple choice batting. So I know, but you got to give him credit. He's the veteran leader of this team. Now, Bryce Harper has looked good and had his moments. The pitching has been great. Who pitched in game 2? Now I'm losing it in my mind again. Noah. Noah looked great. I watched the game. They could have left him in for the 7th inning. They really could have. Like, I don't know what their deal was. They had a day off coming up before game 3. There's really no reason to go to the bullpen and burn it like before in that day off. You know he's not going to pitch again. And I think they're going old-fashioned too, right? If I'm not mistaken, with Noah and Wheeler basically pitching the games in the series, right?
I believe so. Yeah, I have to check who's pitching game 3. But, I mean, you have those two up at the top there. And then you really just doesn't put a lot of pressure on a lot of the other guys if you know you have them at least 3 times in a 3-4 times, especially in a 7-game series.
Yeah, so they don't have the starter list yet.
So Ranger Suarez is pitching for Philly in game 3, and so far in the postseason, he's 1-0 with an ERA just over 1.
Right. So I don't know. I like the pitching. Noah looked great in that game. His breaking stuff looked awesome. His changeup, he was fooling people with fastballs right on the outside corner, which were hittable. But because he was throwing his changeup and his I think it was a sinker split, like he was fooling guys with fastballs down the middle at times, and they were just striking out because they were guessing all the time.
Yeah, I think one of the things too, though, you see in this series is Philly's the experienced team. They've been down this road before. They were in this spot last year, and the Diamondbacks are a team that's still up and coming. I mean, when we all did our baseball preview back in the beginning of the season, you know, I think one of us actually did have the Diamondbacks as a surprise team this year, but they were really more on the up and coming side. I mean, they've got Corbin Carroll, who's one of the best young hitters in the game, but they're really more of an up and coming team, especially in that division that's still got the Dodgers and has the Giants and has the Padres. They weren't really mentioned with those upper teams, but their pitching's been great with Gallen, who's had a superb year. But you know, sometimes when you get this deep into the playoffs and you go up against an experienced team, more often than not, the experienced team is going to come out on top, and that's what I think what we've been seeing with so far.
Right, and like I said, Philly's offense, you're not going to beat them. You have to tame them. You're not going to beat them. That's one of those things where basically it's if you can hold them to 2-3 runs and then you can try to put up offense, even though the Philly pitching is great, you got to tame that offense or else you're not winning any games. It's just not going to happen. And their bullpen has come around. Like they had some questionable issues with the bullpen early on. So I don't know what to expect, but I don't know. You and I were talking before the show. Philly is probably the World Series favorite right now.
I think when you look at the 4 teams that are left right now, it's very hard not to pick the Phillies with the top 2 in the rotation, with a lineup that is hitting on all cylinders. And as much as we bash baseball for the fact that there are too many home runs hit in the regular season, the home run ball is what gets it done in the playoffs. And we've seen that especially from Philadelphia's side with Schwarber, with Turner, with Castellanos, with Harper. That's what's been doing it for them. I mean, I know they've had a couple of 2-run doubles here every now and then, but it's really the home run ball that gets it done. I mean, what you like, though, is the fact they maybe get a couple guys on base, then they hit the home run. But that's just not how baseball is anymore, unfortunately. But they're getting it done when they need to get it done.
The one thing that's going to be dangerous is that it kind of reminds me of the Yankees in that regard, where it's very like homer or bust type team. And if you don't hit and you don't get the power, they don't know how to put 2 singles together and drive a run in. That's not their game. So if they're down 3 runs, 4 runs, that's not their game. And that could get them in trouble if they get down early in games.
That's a great point. And also, what if you go into a very pitchers-friendly ballpark now? The other ballparks that are still left in this postseason, I think Texas is favorable. I think the Astros is also pretty favorable one. Arizona can be, but you know, when you play at Citizens Bank Ballpark, which is a very hitter-friendly park, that also helps as well. But I mean, at the end of the day, though, the pitching also is what gets it done. I mean, the Braves put up historical offensive numbers this year, and look, the Phillies pitching shut them down in the division series.
I just don't. And by the way, I don't want to shit all over the D-backs. Like, they played really well. They beat the Dodgers. They beat the Brewers. Then they beat the Dodgers.
Right.
And like, I don't know. The Dodgers are a disappointment, but that's a whole other episode for another day.
Oh, you could spend the whole entire next hour talking about them. How historical that failure has been over there.
I mean, were you the one? I saw you tweet something out like 3 100 win teams. I think I saw you put that out because people were complaining, and this is a whole nother episode too, like on the playoff format. People need to relax about the playoff format. Like,
yeah,
it's enough. Like, I think I like the wild card round with 3 games in the higher seeds park. You can't play 1 game because that's not fair to either team. You just can't do that. You can't play 2, obviously, because that's an even number. You can't do that. So 3 games, same ballpark. I think that's more than fair because if you can't win in your own home field, that's on you. Yeah. So, I mean, and then they're talking about, so what, then it's 5 and then it's 7. So,
yeah, 5 in the DS, 7 in the LCS and World Series.
So, I get it. The World Series has to be 7 because you want to get at least 4 or 5 games. At least. Well, you have to get at least 4. You want to get 5 or 6 games. You're hoping. So, unless Philly goes in and dominates like Texas or something. But I don't know. Let's talk about the other series as well, which is, so what was that? That was the All Texas series.
Yeah, the Battle of Texas there in the LCS.
So Nathan Eovaldi came out and shocked everybody so far. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, Nasty Nate. I mean, he's had his moments, for other teams, but he's such a weird pitcher because he's had his moments where he seems like he dominates, and then he has moments where he just completely falls apart. But he's been great there for Texas this year.
Yeah, and the offense has been on fire. Like Philly in the NL, the AL with Texas on fire. Seager has just had a resurgence in every way, shape, or form. Obviously, he signed that insane contract as a free agent.
Finally getting that money's worth for him, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could say the same thing about Trey Turner, where he had to earn his money in Philly.
Right, so, and remember what happened this year with Trey Turner for a second, how he it's like he was getting booed, and then there was, I forget the whole detail behind it, but then they rallied around him, started to cheer for him to try and get him going, and he took off from that. I wish maybe more of our players, we have to do it with more of our players and see if it works. But
if they didn't feel like they were being attacked all the time, maybe there wouldn't be so much pressure on them.
Well, that's part of it, and I think that's actually what you've really been seeing with the postseason teams here, like the 100-win teams in general. Is there's so much pressure on them, and I brought this up in one of my Monty moments earlier in the week. So I don't blame the postseason format, but you almost wonder, is the postseason format the reason why these teams are actually where they're trying to benefit the big winning teams? Is it actually the reason why they're failing because some of them are resting for a long, maybe a week or so while the wild card series are going on, and maybe those teams are getting momentum and carrying it over into the series. Now, I'm not saying that that's ultimately what happens because at the end of the day, if your big players don't produce on these big winning teams, we're both Yankee fans. We know that. I mean, how many times have we been down this road the last 20 plus years where they make the playoffs and then they just completely fall apart? But
well, it also doesn't help. Like you're playing 162 game season and all that.
Well, see, and I that's also what I echoed on the Monty moment was, and look, I think the regular season in all these sports, and I can even say all sports, is too long, but we know why they do it. It's about money. I get that. But if you want like this, and all these playoffs have been getting expanded, if you want to keep this kind of playoff format going, then you need to shorten the regular season. Or if you want to have fewer teams in the playoffs, then we need to adjust the format. I mean, that's part of the problem, really, all these sports, is the regular seasons are too long, and that ultimately leads to a longer playoff series. I think in the NBA is especially guilty of that. You don't want the playoffs to be going 1/5 or 1/6 of a calendar year. But,
no, that's a good point. I mean, I was talking to some other friends of mine who are big baseball fans, and they're like, "Oh, well, the reports are they want to add another playoff round." I'm like, "Enough with the playoff rounds." Like,
short the season, then.
Well, I agree, and the problem I have is you're basically killing the authenticity of the playoffs. Like what they're doing in the NFL, where they keep adding rounds and they keep adding now they add a second wild card. And like it's too much. You're watering down what the playoffs are. And if you add another round to the playoffs, so what are you going to do? You're going to have two wild cards play each other to start, and then they're going to advance to the actual wild card round. I mean, like
it's just like you know what it is, Nick. It's like, why play this long of a season if you're going to have almost have to, in some sports, more than half the teams making it into the playoffs?
And that's the problem. That's my point. Like that, and the NBA's getting to that too with this stupid in-season tournament. Like they want everyone to feel like they're in the playoffs so that they compete. Like it's enough already. Like if the team is not meant to make the playoffs, then they're not meant to make the playoffs, and that's it. Like stop giving them an accidental reason to make the playoffs.
Heck, as much as we love more, I think we'd be doing better with less, because it makes everything even more dramatic. Every regular season game would mean something. Like the NBA just has a major problem with load management. You cut the season down to 72 games or so, it makes that every game that much more important. But I know we're not going to do that because it's about money and stuff. But
yeah, but here's the problem though. I'm sure you've heard this, and Tom and I have talked about it many times. The TV contract issues are coming up now because you're getting a lot of people that say, screw cable, I don't want to pay for it. And they're going to digital platforms. Like in the NFL, they're going to YouTube Plus. Or not YouTube Plus. What do they call it? YouTube TV.
YouTube TV, yeah.
Like, because they don't want to watch cable anymore. So why are these big TV giants going to go out and get the contracts if they're going to go digital?
Yeah, it's a very interesting problem that I think we could have a big, long conversation about this in February and March and stuff. But yeah, that's why I brought it up in the Monty moment earlier. I don't think the postseason format is why those 300-win teams all got upset before making the LCS. But I think that it's also a conversation that we need to have in all sports, that these seasons are too long and the playoffs are too long. It almost, like baseball, you could skip part of the year and it's all right. That's what makes the NFL great. That's why I think college football is the best structured sport, because it is only like 13 or 14 games. And then the championship, the college football playoff, is 4 teams. I know next year it's expanding to 12, which I think is too much, but I get it. But it makes every game and the way you play in those games that important every single week. So that's what it is. But when you look at the 4 teams that are left now in the American League, the ALCS, the Astros, which have been as consistent as anybody in the American League here the last 7-8 years. I'm not saying I'm not going to go out to the extreme that some, people have been saying that they're a dynasty, because if they're a dynasty, then we're changing the whole definition of what a dynasty is in sports. But I mean, if you look at this series so far, from the Texas Rangers side, it's been Corey Seager, it's been Garcia, but it's really been this guy that I never even really heard of. He's just 21 years old, Evan Carter.
Yeah, so 21-year-old. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, he only had 62 at bats in the regular season.
He literally came up midway through the season, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much, if not late. But very short sample size. His on-base percentage was over 400. You look at the playoffs so far, he's got 7 hits and 21 at bats. And again, he's just a 21-year-old kid. So I mean, sometimes, that's one thing about the playoffs. You sometimes see these surprise players get hot and you see where it goes. But it's been Garcia. I mean, it's been Carter. It's been Seager. It's been Garver. It's been Jung. I mean, they've got some guys. But also it's been, the pitching staff. Unfortunately, a guy that we know about, Jordan Montgomery, has been fantastic for them too. It's been also Nate Eovaldi, another guy that we know about. It's funny how many former Yankees and Mets are in these playoffs, by the way. Well,
it also makes you realize that basically the guys in Yankee uniforms is too much pressure. New York.
That's possible. I mean, I can't say that sometimes it's a better fit because it's different pitching than it is like with other sports. But Montgomery was not bad as a Yankee. I just don't think they ever really gave him a chance there.
They traded him cold turkey. Don't you remember?
Well, they traded him because they thought he was going to be the odd man out with the rotation that they had, and they knew they needed an outfielder, so they tried to bring in Bader for that. But Bader, when they brought him in, was already hurt.
That was such a mistake. I guarantee you they regret that trade now.
Yeah, because now Bader's going to be gone, it looks like, and They looks like they have their center fielder of the future until we found out that he needs Tommy John surgery, so he's going to miss most of next year. It's just bad there in the Bronx. That's why, when you think about it, baseball, which is really unfortunately not a national sport, and it's not. I mean, let's totally be honest. This is as local, and this postseason is not any proof of that. I don't know what to tell you, but it has become such a localized sport. I mean, we haven't really been relevant in baseball since the All-Star break.
Well, it also didn't help that Judge went down with the injury, but
yeah, but I mean, even when he came back though, too, they still were treading water. I mean, it was amazing they actually finished above 500 this year.
And this was a debate we had also on Hitting for the Cycle. Make sure you tune into that episode. We talked a lot about debates and analytical situations. Like, you're seeing all of these Harvard and Princeton nerds being hired by these teams and say they don't even like baseball. They're there. They get paid $150,000, $200,000 a year to do analytics. That's what they do. And that's part of the reason why Nola probably didn't pitch in the 7th inning. Because they said, oh, well, if you leave him in one more inning, he'll give up 2-3 runs and whatnot. I don't understand it.
Yeah, that's the new rule thing with baseball was first it was the pitch count. Now it's the fact they don't want these guys going third time, facing these hitters third time through the order.
They were talking about that during the game the other night. Like, I just stop. It's too much. Just let them pitch. Like,
baseball's going down a bad road, and we've documented this on ETB for years now. Baseball's going down a bad road. And again, if you want to tell me baseball's in a good spot, then here's a good question for everybody, and you can tweet me at Montalbano Y, Nick and Morgasen Radio, or ETB Sports about this. If baseball's doing so great, then how did a college football game on Saturday afternoon on ABC draw more than Game 1 of the ALCS did on Fox Sunday night?
Yeah, that was bad.
Washington Saturday afternoon drew more people than the All Texas ALCS did Sunday night, and they had an NFL game leading into that too, no less.
Yeah, that was bad. I mean, I have no answer for this. I don't think people want to watch baseball anymore. I think that's part of it, and it's an old person's sport, unfortunately.
And if your team's not in it, it's not like the NFL where, you and I can have the 2 worst football teams in the world, but we'll still watch. We'll still spend 7 hours a day on Sunday watching it, or spend all day Saturday watching college.
I'll tell you the reason why people will watch football. It's because it's 17 games a year, and it's 17 weeks a year, and that's it. Like, or whatever. It was 16, now it's 17. Right. It doesn't matter. Like, you get a set amount of games every year. You watch your team. Either you watch them on Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, Thursday, or just on your local, whatever you watch on. And you look forward to it every day, or every week. And you sit down and you watch. And they figured out how to capture the audience just enough so that you come back every week. Even if your team stinks, you want to come back and watch because you only get 17 of them every year.
Yeah, I know that. I got a 1-5 football team right now. And you know what? I'll still be hooked into the game on Sunday, but absolutely. But, it's weird. So we look at this ALCS, Nick. Do you see any way, and this is going to be a tough one to ask here, but now the Astros down 2-0 going to the Rangers ballpark here. Do you see any way they come back from this, though, and make it a series? Because I don't see in the NLCS, I don't see the Diamondbacks making it a series. I think they might get a game, but I think the Phillies are going to get out of it in 5, and I wouldn't even be surprised with how dominant they've been. They even sweep the Diamondbacks. But there's still some part of me that thinks that the Astros are going to make this a series against the Rangers.
I think the Diamondbacks are out of gas, 100%. Right. I think that they had to do everything they possibly could to, like I said, beat the Brewers, beat the Dodgers, and just to get to play Philadelphia. And Philadelphia's a powerhouse, regardless, even though they keep doing it from the wild card spot somehow. So I think that one's going to be a sweep. This series, though, the old Texas series, we all know Houston's going to win at least one. So it's a matter of when. I don't know when that's going to be. They are going to win at least one, so which means this will end up back in Houston at some point. So I don't know. I think the Rangers pull this out just because they won the 2 on the road in Houston. And I think that's, like I said, a home field advantage. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with those two series. By the time we get to all our next episodes, it's going to be the beginning of the World Series anyway. So, all right, let's move on to some. Oh,
I would say real quick, if the Astros are going to make this a series, though, they've got to get something out of Altuve, Bregman, and Kyle Tucker, and especially Kyle Tucker. This year he hit 29 homers and drove in 112 RBI this year. So far in the postseason, he's 2 for 22 as we record this with 1 RBI.
Also,
one of the biggest guys. I know Alvarez has been good. I know Brantley's been good. Abreu's been all right, but those are your three of your bigger guys there: Altuve, Bregman, and Tucker, and they've been held in check throughout this postseason.
Also, and just to point this out, because people think that the Astros are not human, like the base running blunder by Jose Altuve, missing second base on the return back.
Yeah,
you can't miss second base. You can't do that. Like that cost them the game. Well, in one state or form, it cost them the game. But mental mistakes cost you games.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right, let's move on to some other baseball news. The Giants formally interviewed assistant coach Alyssa Nakken. She would be the first female manager in Major League Baseball. This was making a lot of headlines. I'm all for it, to be honest with you. I hope that it happens. A lot of people are going to say that it's a headline grabber and MLB will do everything in its power to put headlines around it. How about we just let the process play out and see if it happens?
Yeah. Now, I believe she's actually is the first female to be interviewed for a managerial job. So she's already making history in that regard. I know she's been with the organization before, but yeah, I ultimately think if you want to go down that road, that eventually there's going to be a female managing or coaching a men's team. I still thought the first one was going to be Becky Hammond, and there still might be a possibility that I know she's doing great with the Las Vegas Aces right now in the WNBA Finals, but she was under Greg Popovich there with San Antonio in the NBA, and I could definitely see a possibility of this happening, and it would be a great thing. Just forget about sports, but just in real life in general, if something like this could turn out. Now, we'll see what happens with it. It's great that she's getting an interview, and why not? Right? It should happen.
I hope that this works out, and it's not just. Unfortunately, I hope it's not just one of those like attention-seeking interview type things, like where we interviewed her, and we can make a press out of it, and nonsense. I hope they don't do that. Like she's in the dugout already. I think she's an assistant coach in the dugout.
Right. Yeah. So the San Francisco Giants are not like that. So I don't believe that this is just for attention seeking or whatever. I think they truly think that she might have a chance to become a manager someday.
And the only way they can go is up. Gabe Kapler was just stinking it up big time, like as the manager.
He was, yeah. And the Giants have been such a weird team the past 10, 15 years where they've been up a few times, winning a few World Series, and then they've been just in the absolute dumps at the same time. But this would be a very cool thing, and I do give Alyssa Nakken a shot here becoming the manager.
What's your other choices? At this point, I haven't heard anybody else come out.
You're not going to go down the old school road with Showalter.
No.
I'm trying to think of some other guys that are out there right now. It would probably be a couple of minor league guys if you're thinking about it. There aren't that many. That would also put the Giants, let's just say, you bring somebody in to put the Giants over the top here. You still got some very formidable teams there. Now you're talking about three now in that NL West that you've got to contend with. The Dodgers are still going to be in the discussion, even though they've had their falls here these last couple of years in the playoffs. The Diamondbacks are up and coming. The Padres are still there. So, I think she's got a pretty good chance here. And the fact that she's getting interviewed would be a very cool thing.
I hope so. And we'll see what happens, but hopefully it's not just an interview and run.
I was going to say, hopefully this is a process that takes a little bit of time and they don't rush to judgment on either end, whether they say, yes, you get it, or no, you're not. I hope they kind of go through the process here, and I think they will. The Giants are like that. They're not like an organization here that'll try and be an attention-seeking organization. They've been if you really want to be fair, in the 21st century, they've been one of the better teams in Major League Baseball in the 21st century. If you really want to be fair about it.
Right. Okay. Let's move on to another interesting story as well. Kim Ng out as GM after Marlins proposed hiring new president. This story went a million different directions. Now, I don't know really where to start with this whole thing, but one, I would say this was a mutual option, just so people understand her contract situation. She had an option, and the Marlins had an option. The Marlins picked up the option. Kim Ng declined her option to come back. So she's gone. Now, there was a lot of quotes that came out on Twitter that her and Bruce Sherman, who is the official owner of the Marlins, they don't see the eye to eye of the shape of the organization. Now, who's Bruce Sherman? Bruce Sherman knows nothing about baseball at all. He's a businessman.
He's a businessman, yeah.
So why would you disagree with someone who's really turned tables as the first female GM in the sport? Took a playoff team in the Marlins. And now you're just going to let her walk scot-free? Bye.
So are we going to have another fire sale with the Marlins?
That's a good question. I don't really know.
Look at what she did with that team. You know, you had the batting champion this year in Arias. I mean, that trade, which actually worked out great for both teams, the Arias for Lopez trade, worked out great for Miami. They've had some other great pieces in there. I think Jazz Chisholm's been a very, I know he was hurt this year, but Jazz Chisholm's a very solid ball player. They've got some pieces there. And again, you talk about, them being a good team in that NL East that had three formidable opponents in it going into the year. And I just, when I first heard this, and then I, like you, Nick, I tried following all the sides to this, it makes me think that the Marlins are going to be doing something. They're going to kind of blow this up again. I think we're going to be going down 3.0. The only difference this time is that they don't have a World Series they're coming off of this time.
Right. And I'm reading some of the stories, and it just, I don't understand what the logic was for the Marlins, what they were trying to accomplish. So she was hired in November 2020 as general manager, first female GM in any sport.
Yeah.
So I'm reading some of the quotes. Last week, Bruce and I discussed his plan to reshape the baseball operations department. In our discussions, it became apparent that we were not completely aligned on what that should look like, and I felt it was best to step away. So that's all you really need to know. You have a businessman arguing with a baseball GM, and the owner won.
Wasn't it funny, though? Wasn't it like with Jeter, too, that Jeter was saying that? Now, I know he was in a different role, but Jeter
he was an ownership role, technically. Yeah.
Yeah, and wasn't he saying the same thing, that they couldn't agree on the direction the team was going in?
Well, after the first year, they didn't agree what was going down. He sold his stake and said, "I'm out of here. See ya." And I mean, Bruce Sherman obviously is not a nice person by any means whatsoever. I mean, if your GM is coming out and saying that we don't see eye to eye, and then apparently they wanted to hire somebody ahead of her to be responsible for her. And I was like, what is going on here? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, look at they went from 67 and 95 in 21 to 69 and 93 in 22. And then this past year, they jumped from 69 to 84 wins. So it was a 15-game uptick, making a wild card round in a division that had, going into the year, three very formidable opponents. I mean, maybe things were starting to go in the up and up. I mean, what could they? I would love to see what the heck they were disagreeing on. And I'm sure if I had to take two sides, I'm trusting what Kim Ng was doing, because, I mean, they were going in the right direction.
Just so you know, she's got quite a bit of experience. I think she was in the Yankee organization also, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. She has the baseball experience. She's been in baseball for a very long time. I mean, she was on the Yankees, I believe, wasn't it in the 90s?
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is not like, somebody coming out of nowhere in baseball terms to take over as GM. I mean, she has the experience of being assistants and stuff. So, I mean, unfortunately, though, when I think about it, Nick, and I hate to say this, I think this is typical Marlins. Unfortunately, and I feel bad for the fan base down there because it looked like they actually had, some pieces going into next year. And, of course, the first thing you start thinking about is, all right, here we go again. They're going to start trading pieces off.
I mean, it wouldn't be a surprise. So Derek Jeter stepped down as CEO of the Marlins after disagreements with Sherman on the direction of the franchise. Same exact situation. So 4 months later, the Marlins fired Vice President of Player Development and Scouting Gary Dembo, who had clashed with people inside the organization. So it just never ends, never-ending turn cycle. Like, it just over and over and over and over again, same issues.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. Like, it's the Marlins don't learn from the early 2000s, do they?
No, at least those, they at least had 2 championships in 97 and 03 that they could, talk about. Now, what can you talk about? Yeah, you had the batting champion this year, but you know what? You're not going to have that again next year.
But what is having the batting champ? That's an individual award. We talk about individual award and team awards. You want the big team award at the end of the year, if you know what I mean.
Oh, I get it. I mean, you did have, I mean, just looking at the pieces that they had, though, I mean, like I said, it was a 15-game uptick from last year. I mean, just looking at, the roster that they have, I mean, Arias is a nice player. Jazz Chisholm's a pretty good player. I'm trying to see who else they had this year. But, I mean, you get where I'm coming at with that, right?
Didn't they have someone flirting with 400 also, average-wise?
That was Arias, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, he cooled off a bit, but he still ended up with an amazing season, though.
And that's the problem. Like, they get young players. Like, you can go all the way back to, like, Stanton, who they had to trade because they just had a disagreement with the way the organization was going. Look at the 2003 team. They had Delgado and Pudge and Livan Hernandez and on and on and on and on. And they just couldn't keep it together pieces-wise. So, I don't know. The Marlins, in my opinion, don't have the best reputation at all. And it also didn't help for the original owner, Jeffrey Loria. Remember, he had a terrible reputation in owning the team. And then he sells it off, and he basically says, adios, I'm out of here. And Sherman and Jeter and that whole group comes in and takes over and makes it worse.
Yeah, they had Soler this year, Brian De La Cruz, Jesus Sanchez. Now, the one thing I will say, though, the Marlins, if you're looking at them about next year, is their ace, Sandy Alcantara, is going to be out all of next year because he had Tommy John surgery. But
you can't win. This organization cannot win.
No, it's I don't know where they go from here. That's the thing. I mean, do they bring somebody in and do they make any moves? But if you can't agree with Sherman, then what's the point?
I really don't know.
I know you want bring in Cashman, right? Let Cashman leave the Yanks and go down there and him deal with all that craziness, right?
Yeah, really.
Well, we know that's not going to happen.
But all right, let's move on from baseball. Let's get into some NFL. NFL major quarterback injuries. I mean, I lost track how many there were. I mean, Anthony Richardson, who is now done for the season, I think with a shoulder injury. Yeah. You have Justin Fields for the Bears, who's now got a ligament situation, I think, in his thumb.
Yeah, Fields is dealing with a thumb issue. I think it's like a dislocated thumb or a torn thumb ligament. But, I mean, you're going to go through this list. And I think when we do Football Friday later on in the week, you're looking at 2 matchups this week with teams that could have backup quarterbacks.
I mean, well, yeah, the one you're referring to, Bears, Raiders, which was already a bad matchup to begin with.
Yeah, we don't know about Garoppolo too. I mean, he had to go to the hospital after their game during their games last week.
Right. Then you had Watson, who was out, and they still beat the Niners somehow.
That situation is crazy, though. If I've been watching I've been watching SportsCenter, watching ESPN a lot about it, and it's almost everybody's like baffled by what exactly he's dealing with. They're calling it like a bruised rotator cuff.
Yeah.
I think they've got like Stefania Bell, who's their doctor there, like talking about exactly what it is that he's dealing with and the fact that possibly that he can't like drive the football, which I think is kind of crazy, which, if they had Nick Chubb there, they might be able to survive. But the thing that's a bummer about that is you look at the Browns and they've got a Super Bowl caliber defense on that team. So if they were able to get the quarterback position right, you soared them. I mean, they held the Niners in check last week.
Right. So just looking at all these injuries,
but I mean, keep going.
There's so many. There's more. I mean, Daniel Jones is still questionable, I feel like, with the neck injury.
I don't want to mess with that. I mean, I know he returned to the field on Wednesday, but I mean, you don't mess with a neck injury because, you take one more bad hit. I mean, your career is done.
By the way, and I've said this a million times, you've heard me say it, that was wrong what he did on Kay Adams' show, which basically was saying when she asked about the injury and said, "Oh, I really don't want to get into the specifics of it. It's a neck injury."
And I brought this up to you. I think I forget if I brought it up on the football show last week, but his comments about what he was dealing with the neck injury compared to what the same injury that he had, I think it was at the end of the 21 season, were eerily similar.
He said it was different. According to him in the interview, he said it was not the same injury.
Well,
so
it's not the same, like exactly what it is, but I mean, it's a neck problem. And again, you don't mess with neck issues because, especially with this Giants offensive line. I mean, God, he takes one more bad sack, his career's done. And you don't want you hate to see that.
We all know he's going to take a 1, 10, 20 bad sacks just because his offensive line can't hold him up. So I'm surprised he wasn't hurt sooner with the amount of sacks that he's taking.
He could have been. I mean, it only took the 17th one in 7 quarters before he ended up leaving the game against Miami 2 weeks ago.
And you know what? They had a chance to win against Buffalo. They really did.
Oh, I know.
By the way, for a crappy defense that managed to hold Buffalo to no points in the first half of Sunday Night Football, I mean, you got to win that game. You got to win that game. And it's a tale of two halves. And the tale of two halves, and I say that ironically because, one, you blew the play at the end of the first half, and then you get the pass interference call. You're on the one. You can't score. Now, was there a little bit of grabby going on over there on that last play? Possibly.
There always is, though.
But you're not going to. It's never going to be called in that situation
unless it's blatantly obvious. That would be it. But
the refs are not going to allow a small contact play to end a game. I just don't think they would do that.
Or at least allow it to extend by another play, because obviously if the clock runs out, you can't end the game on a defensive penalty. But
right, they already had I think that was an untimed down, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, no, it's rough. I mean, it just continues the trend that we've had this year at 1-5. I mean, the only other bright spot about that game was that Saquon was back, and it originally didn't look like he was coming back Sunday.
He actually looked good too. He had quite a few large runs.
Yards. And, Nick, I mean, I know we're talking about quarterback injuries right now, but I hate to tell you this. It's week 8. The Giants are 1-6, 1-7. They got to look into trading Barkley. They're not going to be able to bring him back. You can't bring him back missing 23 games in his young career. I mean, you almost might have to think about trying to move on from him.
Well, I think I said that to you quite a few times last year, that they probably should have tried to trade him, and his value was still a little bit higher, but now his value is down.
It's down, but I mean, you're not going to re-sign him. A team will give you a draft pick or two possibly for him. Not a first rounder, but you'll get a couple of mid-rounders for him. I mean, we'll see where they are. I mean, there's perfectly more time for that. But, the other thing that came out of that Giant Bill game for a second was, speaking of quarterback injuries, Josh Allen is dealing with a shoulder issue. Now, he says he's going to be fine, that he'll play Sunday against the Patriots up there at Foxborough. But, quarterbacks and shoulders, again, we talk about Deshaun Watson with his rotator cuff. How much is the shoulder going to be a factor for Allen?
That's a good question. He's had that shoulder injury before, and it has affected him quite a bit, where he can't get those deep throws down the field. Because you have to remember, Josh Allen's a play-action quarterback by trade. So if he can't throw the football, he's basically hamstrung, for lack of a better term. But
do you remember the elbow issue he had last year that he played through, and he
couldn't throw. He couldn't throw the deep ball.
Didn't really be effective for a few weeks.
Right. It's just, I don't know, that Buffalo's in free fall mode a little bit just because they're hurt, even though they keep winning, which is kind of ironic.
Yeah,
But
and you know, if they could get through the stretch like that, then it almost then it's kind of scary. Then, if you think about it,
it is. And then one thing I'll say, the Eagles also. Now, not injury prone, but I thought Jalen was going to get knocked out quite a few times the way that they were playing in that game. Like, I thought he was going to get hurt. But all right. The one last quarterback injury, and it has to do with the game we're about to do for Thursday Night Football. So we'll just put that up here. Thursday Night Football, Week 7, Jaguars at the Saints. Saints are a -1 favorite going into it. Now, Trevor Lawrence is on the injury report. They're saying that it looks like he's going to play, most likely going to play, but they were saying he's questionable with a slight, there goes that term again, slight knee sprain. Is that even a word? A term, I should say?
I've heard it before. I mean, I don't know if I've ever said like slight knee sprain. I mean, there's either knee or not, but I guess you can say slight, though, because this is a short week, though, for Jacksonville. And, you know, Nick, if you look at the big picture in this one, I'd make the case that you don't play him. You don't play him later on.
You can't play him. You can't play him. You're not going to risk it. He's going to be up for the next big contract for quarterback's sake. You can't play him. I mean, but you are going to lose if you don't play him.
But if he does play, how effective is he going to be? You know, because how healthy is he? It's a short week for them. A Saints team that's very good defensively. You know, they've only given up more than 20 points once this year. So
that's true.
I wouldn't take that chance. Honestly, if I'm Jacksonville, I would run Beathard out there. I would run the ball with ETN. And I have to look at the big picture here with Jacksonville because, you know, they're still the favorites in that AFC South. I know Houston's been coming along here. They had a huge win against those Saints in Week 6. It's one of my big takeaways from last week is that Houston won that game. I think in the big picture, I know I don't usually like doing this, but I wouldn't start Trevor Lawrence later on tonight.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't either because if one more bad injury is done for the year, then the Jaguars have no chance whatsoever this year. Yeah, I'm in this case. I am probably leaning towards the Saints if we're both agreeing that Trevor Lawrence is not going to start because I just think Derek Carr will come out and throw, and I just think it'll be a field day offensively for the Saints. So I'm going to lean on the Saints for the -1.
There you go. Yeah, I'm just looking at real quick. I'm just looking at their schedule here. So after they play the Saints, they go to Pittsburgh. Then they're on their bye. And then here's a very interesting coming out of their bye week in Week 9. San Francisco, Tennessee, at Houston, home to Cincinnati, at Cleveland, home to Baltimore, at Tampa, home against Carolina, and at Tennessee. That second half of the schedule is an interesting test for them.
Yeah,
So if you think about it, you don't play Lawrence here, and you have 10 days to get ready for Pittsburgh, and then you've got your bye.
Yeah.
So you have a possibility that Lawrence can get 2 weeks of rest, 2 extra weeks of rest, really, in a 3-week span if he doesn't play Week 7. Yeah, as far as picking this game, by the way, this is an Al Kirk and Kaylee special on Amazon Prime. Just had to say that. But I had to bring my Monty Moment and Football Friday to ETB here. I would say even if Trevor Lawrence does start this game, I would take the Saints because I like their defense a lot in this one. I mean, it's pretty much a pick 'em, but the Saints defense has only given up more than 20 points once this year. And yes, their offense isn't great. I think at the Superdome, though, it's a little bit of a different thing. And I think they would hold Jacksonville down in check. And if you remember one thing last week also, yeah, Jaguars won that game big, but the Colts came back there in the fourth quarter. It was like 31-6 at one point. It ended up being 31-20. I think this game's close. I'd be curious. The over-under on this game, I almost feel like this is going to be last week, one of the things about Week 6, Nick, was that there were a lot of low-scoring games. And I feel like this one, again, is going to be another close one down there at the Superdome. It almost feels like it's like 20-17. I'm going to say. So I would take the money with the Saints here as my first official pick for week number 7.
So the over-under as of now is 40.
Yeah, so they kind of have that as a kind of a lower scoring game then. Yeah, I think this game is going to be a little bit lower than that. I have it at 37. I have it 2017 Saints.
I think it's going to be low scoring, especially if Lawrence doesn't play, because I don't think they're going to be able to throw the touchdowns needed to make those points. So
ETN is going to be a big one. It's going to be a big factor in this game.
You're going to see a lot of stack in the box on both sides of the defense. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Some other news going on around the world of the NFL also, and unfortunately now it's time for the screaming segment of this show. Aaron Rodgers,
folks. I kind of brought this up to Nick. I'm like, we have to bring this up here.
So Aaron Rodgers says he's ahead of schedule, but hurdles remain. Go ahead, Aaron. Tell me, how are you ahead of schedule? Just because you were throwing footballs on the sideline before the Eagles game without crutches, that means you're ahead of schedule? Really?
That's what he's saying.
He's not ahead of schedule. He just wants to make headlines.
Well, he's doing that in a million different ways. And it is kind of impressive to see him out there. What is this now? 4 or 5 weeks after he's had the surgery. But there's a lot that he still has to get done here. I mean, they say now. Remember though, his surgery. Not this really mean. It kind of means something, but his surgery was not the actual really like Achilles surgery that a lot of the players get. He had
a different surgery. Yes,
different kind of surgery. The kind of sped up one that still though would be 6 months before he gets back out there. And again, this is not some like 24-year-old kid we're talking about. We're talking about a 39 going on 40-year-old quarterback that's been in the league a very, very long time here.
It's true. And you know what? And you have guys like Mike Greenberg at ESPN, who's a massive Homer Jet fan, who I got mad at last week because he said on Get Up that the Jets are the most competitive team to the Chiefs in the AFC. Like, are you kidding me? How are they the most competitive team in the AFC?
Yeah, I don't know if I could say if I can go that far yet. If Rodgers was there, then we could talk about that. But
I don't even think with him there they're the most competitive team.
Well, I think their defense would still be would give them a challenge. Although I could say the Browns' defense is better. I could say the Browns could be more of a challenge to the Chiefs because of their defense. But I mean, there's some pieces there, but there's still some things though with the Jets that just you question with. Now, we said a couple of weeks ago if they could get to their bye week at 3-3. That things could be kind of interesting, and they did do that. You know what? However they did it, they got to 3-3, and they're going into their bye week this week. And you come out their next 6 games. I mean, they could do 3-3, 4-2. Now, where does that get them in that regard? That's the $1 million question in all this.
And that's the problem I'm having. Like I told Johnny before we started, like Jets fans, like I almost went on the rampage on Jet fans on social media because they're saying, oh, well, we were competitive against the Chiefs. We beat the Broncos and we beat the Eagles. We're a competitive team. You're not a competitive team. You're not. This is ridiculous. Zach Wilson's not going to be your savior to go to the playoffs.
I think if he, as long as he doesn't turn the ball over and make any mistakes, limit the mistakes, then the Jets could be at least in contention for a wild card.
Okay, but they're not going to have any shot against any of these bigger teams with the bigger name quarterbacks.
I think that's fair, but their defense is going to keep them in games, And if I would have known that Jalen Carter and Darius Slay were both going to be out for the Eagles last week, I may have changed my pick and at least grabbed the points last week in our football picks. But that's the thing, though, Nick. I think their defense is still going to keep them in games. It's just going to be, can Zach Wilson limit the mistakes on the offense side? Can the defense continue to force turnovers like they did with Jalen Hurts last week? I mean, they did get 3 Jalen Hurts turnovers, which I think was only the second time in his NFL career that he had three interceptions in a game. So you do that. You held Kansas City pretty much in check. If it wasn't for that terrible call that maybe changes the game around there, I mean, there have been some moments. Their defense was very good good enough against the Broncos and against the Broncos a couple weeks earlier. So defensively, I think they're going to be able to stay in these games. Now, I'll tell you right now, you come off the bye week and you beat the Giants, and those fans are going to talk about Super Bowl. Because that's a lot of times is their Super Bowl. I mean, let's be fair. The Jets make the game against the Giants every 4 years like their Super Bowl.
That's ridiculous.
I think it's a little much too, because first of all, I think they should be more focused on their AFC opponents than they are the Giants.
What does winning a game against the Giants mean? It means nothing.
Well, pride, the fact they think they're the best team in New York, because that's what they like to do, Nick. You know that. I don't agree with it. I think look, I'm a Giants fan. I'm more focused on the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Commanders than I am the Jets. But
win, lose, or draw against the Giants, I don't care because that result doesn't affect me.
Well, yeah, wait. Watch these shows after week 8 and see what happens. But that's the thing. So Rodgers can say he's ahead of schedule, and I think it's creating kind of a false optimistic approach. I mean, it's nice, but you also have to be realistic on this. I mean, this is a very serious, Achilles injury. And again, even if he does come back, the guy hadn't played football since September. How effective is he going to be?
He's not.
He had no preseason and 4 snaps and 75 seconds of game time.
That's ridiculous. People need to calm down. I know Jets fans, like, when they see victories go up on the record and they're 3-3. Oh, well, we got where we said we're going to be 3-3 through 6 games. You're lucky to be 3-3. The Eagles are a mess. You almost beat the Chiefs because Patrick Mahomes is not clicking on all cylinders. You're playing teams at the right time. You know how we say it's all about timing?
That whatever works, though, right?
But I'm just saying, like, people need to relax and realize, excuse me, that the Jets are not, just because they won a game against the Eagles, now everyone's going to think, oh, my God, we're going to make a run.
Kind of, though, with the favorable schedule they have coming out of the bye week, though, in week 8, that might be why.
We'll see.
By the way, did you realize what you just did there?
What?
You just pulled a Rodgers.
Wait, what?
People need to relax. You just didn't spell it out.
Oh, God, I didn't even realize that.
RELAX.
See, he just – but I think that's what – see, I'm going to try and go halfway with this because I can see why there's optimism, but I think there's optimism because of the defense and the fact that the schedule now coming out of the I almost said All-Star break, out of the bye week is kind of favorable. Now, the question again is going to be, can Zach Wilson lead this team, limit the mistakes? Because now we know that Kirk Cousins is not coming here because they reported that he is not going to waive his no-trade clause. By the
mistake. The Jets blew every opportunity there.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting that Cousins, I mean, maybe you give him credit that he wants to stay there in Minnesota, but I was kind of surprised that he said that it was reported that he was not going to waive it.
Well, he's a free agent. He's not going to be there.
But if you wants to win a title, don't you think he would have a better chance outside now of Minnesota, where he doesn't have arguably the best wide receiver in football, and now we just also found out this week that one of their better defensive players just got put on IR there, Marcus Davenport.
No, I totally agree. I mean, one place could have been the Colts. That was a team that was kind of up and down. Like, that division's kind of open for grabs. That would have been an interesting place. There was a few teams I was really looking at. The Commanders was another one I was actually looking at too. Because Sam Howell is the most sacked quarterback, and he used to play there actually before they were the Commanders.
And look at what they did last week. I mean, that just proves how we don't know anything about this league. We'll see. And maybe Kirk just wants to stay there in Minnesota and be loyal. We have to give them credit for maybe these guys just want to stay loyal to their city and their team. That's it. But we'll find out here. Jets are going to be a very interesting team now. You go into the bye week and Aaron Rodgers, you could just sit back. I won't say the R word. I'll just say sit back and watch the games on Sunday and Monday.
RELAX.
Hey, I'm the one that's going to have to suffer watching the Giants possibly lose another game Sunday against Washington.
Maybe you're going to be watching that one at the bar?
Of course, absolutely. I'm not watching that game at home. If I'm going to suffer, I'm going to be out with my friends at the bar Sunday.
All right, 2 more quick stories. Former Rockets guard Kevin Porter's ex-girlfriend says he didn't hit me. So now we're going to go back on this, right? Is that what's happening here?
Yeah. This is such a weird thing. And then he gets – other news is that he gets traded to Oklahoma
OKC.
City.
Yeah.
Right. And didn't didn't Houston also send 2 draft picks over to
yeah, that's what it looks like. And then they waived them.
They waived them, yeah. So that's the last thing Oklahoma City needed was more draft picks, by the way. Yeah, this is such a weird story. I know you and Tom have been covering this for a while here on ETB, but I don't know what to make it. And of course, if you're going to leave this up to the NBA, I don't trust Adam Silver of the National Basketball Association to, I understand they're going to go through the due process and stuff, but do you trust them to come down with the right decision on this? I don't.
Yeah, I mean, if we learn from the John Morant situation and oh my God, the former Celtics head coach that
Ime
Udoka,
the Miles Bridges situation with Charlotte.
Didn't he just get arrested again for breaking a violation or something?
Something, yeah.
I mean, the NBA can't do anything. My favorite acronym for NBA, nothing but assholes, because that's what they are, because they don't know how to handle these discipline situations. Now, I'm reading an ESPN article, and so this is, I can never pronounce her name, Kaisir Gondrezic, a former WNBA player, I think was the woman he was dating. Quote, he never balled his fists up and hit me. So now we're getting into semantics, whether he hit you or not?
Well, there's more. Is that what was being reported that he did? Like,
it was, well, I don't know if you remember from the story. So, like, he did it, and supposedly either the brother made the threats on social media, which Tom and I came out and said that was wrong. You could be angry behind the scenes if your sister is getting hit, but don't make threats on social media. No. That's the last thing you want to do. The other quote that she said, and he definitely didn't punch me in the face numerous times. That is a lie. I don't have any injuries to support that. Well, why would you say that after all the pop-up circumstance that came out from it? Why?
Yeah.
That's not adding up to me at all. So
there's something that's missing, and that now doesn't make a lot of sense in all of this.
So it says Porter was arrested after the alleged attack, initially charged with multiple felonies, including assault and strangulation. However, Manhattan prosecutors dropped one of the assault charges Monday after acknowledging Porter did not fracture Gondrzic's neck vertebrae during the incident. Porter still faces charges of second-degree strangulation and third-degree assault, to which he has pleaded not guilty.
So technically, this is kind of semantics then, because saying he didn't hit me still, doesn't take that strangulation out if you really want to go technical here.
And it says a police spokesperson said shortly after the alleged attack that officers were informed Gondrzic's sustained a laceration to the right side of her face and was complaining about pain to her neck. And she was transported to the hospital for evaluation. All right, I'm confused now.
That's what I'm trying to get at. I mean, I've seen this story in the news a lot here these last several weeks.
I don't understand. Like, so the reports from the police are saying that she had marks for getting hit. She's claiming she wasn't. Is this the whole I don't want to take the hit reputational wise because he's an NBA player and I'm a WNBA player and I don't want my name out there?
Yeah, it's funny. You just took the words right out of my mouth there. That's kind of where I was going to go at with all this, and also false reporting. If that could be something you look at too.
First of all, you can get arrested for a false report.
Exactly. See, that's where I was going at. I think that if this ends up being this happens like that, you can get charged yourself with something like that too.
So if that's the case, now again, this is just based off what I'm reading here. If she's claiming that this never happened and this was reported, then she should be arrested.
It's kind of looking like that, right?
Again, I'm not saying that the incident didn't happen, but if she's claiming that she was not hit and that she didn't say it was a lie, but she's saying it never happened, there shouldn't have been a police report. What the police spokesperson say that there's marks. So are you putting the police's reputation at stake too?
Or were those marks from something totally different?
I don't know. So this is one more quote. It says, "It happened very fast, not to the degree of what was reported." She told the New York Post. It was an argument that occurred in the room for not even 10 seconds. Okay, hold up. An argument for 10 seconds doesn't lead to laceration marks.
No, I can tell you right now, that's not.
So something doesn't add up. Someone is not telling the truth here.
This is like the kind of thing you put on like the Steve Wilkos show or something like that, and you see something like this.
Or Maury.
Kind of story. Yeah, but this is more of a Wilkos story than it is a Maury thing. Just thinking about it, but yeah, that's what it feels like. Something is not adding up in all this, though, Nick, and I'm starting to wonder if maybe, Porter wasn't, the wrong one in all this, and maybe following the false report or something might have been.
The problem is it's going to be tough to prove, like if it's a false report, like
yeah,
because the lawyers will say, "Oh, well, she was in a bad mental health state of mind, and she felt in danger, and all this stuff," which she could have been. We don't know.
Yeah,
but
there's also stuff we don't know. Yeah,
but how many times have we heard this with athletes before, where athletes get reported for doing something, and then afterwards we find out like the story was not even remotely close to what was being reported.
Yeah, we've covered that on shows a lot here.
All right, we'll get to one more story. I say this one for last because I just think it's hilarious and it feels like a game show to me.
Well, that's perfect then. That's why I'm here. I'm here then.
So, the James Harden no-show at 76ers camp. There's a lot of directions I could really go with this. Tom actually says it correctly every week when we have had to discuss this drama. James Harden is the most overrated player in the history of the NBA, and I agree with him. He's overrated. He's never going to win an NBA title because he's too busy leaving every team that he gets traded to. I can't stand him. I wish he would just leave the NBA and be gone.
It's funny though because talk about criminals in the NBA. It's not like he's done anything criminal here. It's just on the court, in the most important games of the year, he literally no shows.
Well, wait a minute. His attitude is criminal.
Well, it's look. He's made a lot of He said a lot of dumb things. He's done a lot of dumb things. I mean,
the no shows at camp is not helping his case.
No, it's absolutely not. And then also, what was it like? Wasn't he like overseas?
Well, that was yeah. Tom and I covered that incident where he went to China with, I forgot what his shoe brand deal is. It's one of those shoe brands, and he basically put who's the Sixers GM? Who was his GM in Houston? He put Daryl Morey on blast in front of a bunch of people in China.
But think about it though. But think about how bullyish and childish and stuff it is to actually do that overseas in China and not like right to his face.
It's James Harden.
It is. And I never wanted any part of him. I felt even bad like when you had him there at Brooklyn because it just doesn't make any sense. And you just look at the teams that he's been on. There's no coincidence that the teams that he's been on have not been successful in the postseason when he's been there.
Like, I'm not shocked.
It's sad because what's really sad? The coaches are the ones that take the downfall for all that, when really this is a spot where the player is really the one that's causing all of this. But you can't fire the player.
But are we really shocked that James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant didn't work out? You had three of the biggest egos in one room.
Yeah, that's but what we say though in the NBA, you can have all the talent in the world, but if they don't mesh and gel together, it doesn't mean a darn thing.
And the only thing that keeps teams like wanting him is because of his talent, not because he can win games. Like, they want him out there scoring and rebounding and whatever.
Well, Nick, it could win you regular season games. I mean, he can.
He's
in the regular season. But
he's a regular season player. He'll never be a playoff contention player. That's not who he is. He can't lead a team. In my opinion, he's not even an A-level player. In my opinion, I think he's a B- at best. In my opinion, I think that's being nice too. Like, and then you had all the rumors of, and this is a joke that runs on our show all the time, but he basically came to camp. So basically because that's what he does. When he doesn't want to be somewhere, he just comes in with a fat suit or just starts eating.
He burns that off so fast. I wonder what kind of diet he's on.
Who the hell knows? But James Harden being a no-show is not a surprise at all.
No.
I mean, the Sixers, Daryl Morey basically said to him, hey, we're not trading you unless we get the deal we want. And I'm agreeing with Daryl Morey there. Like, I'm on Daryl Morey's side the whole time on this. Like, usually I'm able to find, like, both sides of an argument. I can't find any argument for James Harden here at all.
Do we think he plays a single minute for the 76ers this year? Because I don't.
If he wants to be traded, he can't sit out.
You know what it's gonna be, Nick? It's gonna turn out that he's gonna need the 76ers more than the 76ers need him.
Oh, that's not even a question. That is like the most obvious statement you made right there. That he's got to play. He can't sit out.
There would be a team that would be desperate enough to go get him.
Okay, but he was on big market teams, so it's not like he's been playing on rinky-dink small market teams and like a big market team's going to go after him. Think about what he's been on. He's been on Brooklyn. He's been on Houston. Not major market, but they were up there. Who else did he play for? Philadelphia.
Yeah.
What are the he played for OKC, but whatever. But he played on some good teams. That's the weird thing. Kevin Durant and James Harden are similar in that regard. They've played with a lot of big names. They just don't win. Well, Kevin Durant won.
Durant's won, yeah.
But I will always give Steph Curry the credit for those championships, not him. But that's a whole debate.
Well, Durant's biggest problem is his health. I mean, I know he has some attitude things too, but his production versus Harden. I mean, you would take a Durant every day and twice on Sunday before you take a Harden one.
Oh, by far, because Kevin Durant can spread the floor better than James Harden.
And Durant doesn't go AWOL. Like this. His only problem is his health. I mean, he's had a lot of injury problems these last couple of years.
No, that's a good point. I don't know. Like I said, I would take Damian Lillard over James Harden. And I know Damian Lillard has had his ego problems and all that stuff, but at least he's going to score, and he's not going to complain.
He was for the longest time loyal to his fan base before this off-season happened. And
I don't blame him for being upset because the Trailblazers organization didn't care. This is not that the organizations didn't care about James Harden. James Harden just chose not to care.
Not to care, exactly. Much different.
So, like, with a guy like Damian Lillard, they were willing to finally let him go. Do I think the way that Damian Lillard handled it was bad? Yes. In a lot of ways. Telling his agent that basically I'm only willing to go one place, that's tampering, reverse tampering, in my opinion. But Damian Lillard earned the right to go to a contender in every way, shape, or form. James Harden does not deserve to go to any contender whatsoever. And the Clippers are not a contender. Like, he keeps saying, I want to play for the Clippers. Think about if he ends up in a Clippers uniform, okay? Kawhi, Paul George, and James Harden?
Again, that's the West Coast version of what the Nets had.
But think about that. Kawhi can't stay healthy at all. Paul George now can't stay healthy.
George can't stay healthy, yeah.
And also, those two guys have a load of ego on top of them also.
And also, is that trio getting past the Suns? No.
No. They're not getting past Milwaukee. They're not getting past Boston.
I'm just thinking about out west. Forget the East.
But I just meant in general. Like, if you have any chance against any of those teams. I still think the East is somewhat stronger in some aspects. Yeah. But I just don't... Philly's in trouble. That's the best way I can... No, but Philly's just in trouble in general. Like, if I'm Joel Embiid, I'm demanding a trade out of Philadelphia. Like,
I think, yeah. I mean, sometimes you almost can see in his body language that he's like, I don't want to deal with this anymore.
And he won an MVP in the dysfunctional season.
And you know what, though, Nick? Here's what's really sad. This whole thing about the process, trust the process there in Philadelphia, it's going to turn out to be a failure because it's
over.
Because it's literally right now it's on its last stages. They did not win a championship there in Philadelphia. So
wait, what did they have? 7-8 years of trust the process? They didn't win?
no, I mean, and look, I mean, the process got them Joel Embiid, who I think you can say was a positive in that. It got them Ben Simmons, who I don't think you can say really in the overall of it was a positive. Who else? I mean, some of the other pieces they brought in were okay, but the process didn't work.
And they should call it fail the process, not trust the process.
Look, I mean,
it just didn't work.
If you want to use process, I mean, the process that my Knicks have been doing has actually been working because they've been one of the more consistent teams the last couple of years.
Believe it or not, I would take the Knicks over Philadelphia right now.
That's the thing. This situation with Philadelphia, I think, benefits teams like the Knicks going into this season.
With all the dysfunction going on in Philadelphia, how can the Knicks not be better than them right now? I mean,
and their team for the most part is pretty much the same. And that's the thing. When you go to take the next steps, you always like to have a building block of pieces. And they've had the same head coach now in Thibodeau, who I like. Barrett, hopefully, if he rebounds to what he was like, if Brunson's like what he was, Mitchell Robinson. I mean, they've got some guys there. They just needed to take it to the next step here. The problem they have is you've got Milwaukee and Boston and Miami who are still dynamite teams there in the Eastern Conference.
Well, by the time we get to next week, next 206 will be right after opening night of the NBA. So
getting some sports equinoxes back, Nick. It's the fun time of the year.
But that'll just about do it, though, for episode 205. Follow Empty the Bench on social media at ETB Sports, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at ETB Sports. Make sure you follow the Empty the Bench Podcast Network at ETB Network, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at ETB Network. Make sure you follow us on YouTube, youtube.com/ETB Network. Update 584 subscribers as we speak. Make sure you follow our website, etbpodcast.com, for all the latest blogs and information, entertainment, sports. We do some pick segments up there as well. I will let you in on a little teaser. We are working on a little bit of a partnership I'll just leave it at that. Working out a partnership for Football Friday, which will eventually hopefully expand to the whole network as well. Hopefully by week 8, that's kind of the plan for the season. So stay tuned for that as well. Johnny, tell them where they can find you for your stuff also.
Okay, so you can follow me at Montalbano NY there. Also, our show's count is at Game On ETB on Facebook and Twitter, and Instagram at GameOn_ETB. Right now, we've got multiple Monty moments per week that are going out. Obviously, the Big Football Friday show, which we'll be back with on Friday, and whatever other surprises. It's that time of the year now where you start getting all 4 major sports and, of course, college into the conversation. So we've got a little bit of everything here as we start to wind down October and head into November, Nick.
Yeah, a lot, like you said, sports equinox, a lot of stuff coming up, a lot of surprises along the way, some new shows reportedly in the works as well. So make sure you follow us at ETB Network for all that latest information. So that'll do it for episode 205. For Johnny Montalbano, I'm Nick Morgasen. Tom will be back for episode 206 next week. I guess that'll do it. Good night, everybody.
Good night, friends. See you next week.